Hi, everyone. My name is Yuvi. I'm one of the maintainers of the JupyterHub project. I'm also a co-founder and tech lead of 2i2c, a nonprofit that does a lot of community engagement and also runs JupyterHubs as infrastructure for people. And this is a talk about sort of like expanding how people see JupyterHub, in the same way that when people say Jupyter, mostly people think of JupyterLab or just notebooks, even though it's like a pretty expansive project. When people think of JupyterHub, they only think of like, oh, it's a multi-user Jupyter notebook, which is how literally it was phrased when it was launched 10 years ago, and we are all older now. Including JupyterHub, right? And we can all do more things than we could do 10 years ago, whether we want to or not, and that is also true for JupyterHub. So this talk is really a demonstration of the various things that you can do, and also an invitation for you to think more expansively about how JupyterHub can serve you and your users, because notebooks are great, but there is a lot of places where your end users are better served in a different way. And when that is the case, we need to meet them there rather than force them to come to us, right? Also, the difference, I think, between confidence and cockiness is whether you can pull something off. And this is like 6 live demos in there, so let's see what happens. So as part of the JupyterHub leadership retreat, like me, Ryan Lovett, and Martha, and a bunch of other people came up with this as what JupyterHub feels like today, not just for notebooks, right? Like it's like you provide your users who are like very different kinds of people web-based access to their data science tools, whatever that may be, right? Could be Jupyter through Lab, or all the R users I know use RStudio. I love RStudio for that. VS Code, at least an open source version of that. Custom tools like DS9 for the Astro people, or random Linux desktop stuff. But also wherever it is that you are, right? Like you get the same interface on your HPC Center, on your Mac Mini under your desk, on Jeff Bezos's personal computer, or wherever it is that you end up running them. And I really love this diagram because, again, like we can expansively think about it rather than be stuck to a particular niche. A lot of this is made possible through Jupyter Server Proxy, which is a JupyterHub project that allows you to basically proxy random applications native to JupyterHub. Ryan Lovett, who I think is somewhere here, helped start it along with me, although he is very hard to get him to take credit. So if you see him, tell him he started Jupyter Server Proxy, and eventually he'll believe it. Let's look at our demos, right? And let me do it one-handed because I had to hold this mic. I'm going to do it all on different hubs. So this is on the NOAA Fisheries JupyterHub, which is something that we help run. And so this is a standard Flask demo app, right? It's very, very bog standard. It just says hello world, and I am going to run it. So this is running in a JupyterHub on AWS, right? So if I just go to this URL, it's not going to work because this is localhost on the remote server. This is where Jupyter Server Proxy comes into the picture. Basically, I'm going to show you that I can take the URL and just, instead of lab, it's very tiny font there, but trust me, I'm not lying to you. So I can say proxy/5000. So the 5000 is the port on which it's listening, and proxy is just saying, like, all right, let's proxy to that. And you can see that this request was sent in an authenticated fashion from my laptop to the JupyterHub running there, and then routed through to Flask. You can see that this is happening here. And I can change it to something else. And go back here and refresh. And you can see this, right? So this shows the most basic functionality of Jupyter Server Proxy, which is really like authenticated access to a process running inside your Jupyter server over there, no matter where you are, right? Like and without, like, if you look at the Flask, it does not have anything to do with authentication, right? It doesn't have to do any of that. That's all handled for you at the proxy level. That's basically what Jupyter Server Proxy does, and you the Flask app doesn't know anything about Jupyter Server Proxy, right? It's just like very much clearly built on web standards and generally, proxying random things into each other. So this shows you like one of the critical part of proxying, which is just sending the traffic through. But then I'm going to show you another demo where it talks about the other part of it, which is, it'll have to start a server for you most often. And I'm going to use the example of OpenRefine. I don't know if people here know of OpenRefine, but OpenRefine is a very popular application in qualitative data cleaning, right? Like in the best of the sciences, which is all the sociology stuff. And it's a Java application. So if anything is slow, let's blame Java. And usually you download it to your laptop and run it. But it's just a standard web application, so there's no reason we can't run it here. So it's just slow because it's Java. I'm gonna open another terminal, and so this is the documentation for Jupyter Server Proxy, and here we have example is using OpenRefine, and this is how you can configure Jupyter Server Proxy. And in this case, in this instance, this is running on my binder, which is much more stable, by the way, now, if you've not used it. So if you're run away from binder because it was unstable, please come back. So you can see that there is an icon here for OpenRefine, right? And this is the configuration that provides that. We can basically say, like, oh, yeah, OpenRefine server. And then, when the button is clicked, just call this function. And the function just, there is a lot of ways you can configure it. You can give it an icon. You can make it open in a new tab, lots of different things. But fundamentally, it's like, what process do I start here, right? So instead of me opening a terminal and then typing, refine-p and the port number, and then copy pasting this, and then going to that same port, which I will do somewhere here. Question mark. Instead of doing all of that, which your users are not going to do, right? You as the admin can create a package or set this config, and they can just click this OpenRefine button, and it will do exactly the same thing, right? So you can see how, like, by just adding these two things, just start an arbitrary process and proxy it without needing to do anything else, you can unlock, like a whole host of like different things. OpenRefine here again does not know anything about Jupyter, doesn't know anything about Jupyter Server Proxy, and it works like just fine. And I know that people in the Wikimedia ecosystem use this because it's a Java application. You're not going to run it on a Chromebook. You're not going to run it on a lot of computers unless you hate your users and want them to install Java in 2025. So this is a very good way to provide access to tooling that is otherwise difficult for people to like get set up on. And if you have a 2-hour workshop, you don't have to spend the first 90 minutes of that fixing everyone's laptops, no matter what it is that the tooling that you're using. So anyway, conceptually, again, think of this as start a process, proxy things to the process very dynamically. And that means you can do that for everything. So that's 2 out of 2 demos worked, which is great. Now let's do demo number 3, right? Which is RStudio. I love RStudio. I love I love all the sociology stuff. And I feel like the R community is a beautiful, wonderful community of people, and I know that you can use that in Jupyter Notebooks. But culturally speaking, a lot of them use RStudio, and JupyterHub can support that just as well. So the example I have here is University of Toronto, who we also run hubs for, and they have a significant R presence, right? And I think it's also really important that like people don't need to know any of this. They don't even need, like JupyterHub is infrastructure, which means that it's best when nobody knows it's a thing that exists. So in this case, this is their landing page, right? And you go here and you're like, right, I want to use RStudio. You click login. I've already logged in. This just starts the server for them, right? This is running in JupyterHub, but they don't know that, right? There's no Jupyter presence here. There's no JupyterHub presence here. It's just RStudio, right? And that's happening because if you look in the URL, it just says /RStudio. There is a Jupyter RSession proxy package that does all of the configuration, right? It figures out how to start RStudio, like pass environment variables, blah, 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 do all the things that needs to be done. So ultimately, as the end user, you can just go to like /RStudio, and then it'll start that. And it'll also, you can start your users in JupyterLab too, which is what I have manually gone back for. And if this ever loads, you will see there is an RStudio icon in there, right? So instead of telling your users, go to Jupyter and click the RStudio icon, you can just set the default URL to start in /RStudio, and it will just, do that. So they don't need to know Jupyter exists. So I invite you to think of the fact that you can serve your users with applications without them ever having to encounter the word Jupyter, because we don't need to make a lot of money, right? I mean, we do, but we also don't. So we don't have to push our, logo in your face every 5 minutes. So that means you can serve your users as you need to. Also, Jupyter RSession proxy, also from Ryan Lovett. So please tell him that he created that as well. So, and this works for like everything, and you'll be surprised at some of the things it works for. And now we're gonna do this with basically Linux desktop, right? Like Linux desktop is, let's just think of this as desktop, right? Because there's still a lot of extremely powerful desktop-based tools that are very heavily used in a lot of workflows. And while web-native versions of them are coming, I do think there is always a chunk of users who currently are best served by desktop-based tools. And it's important that we bring them along wherever we go, right? And also not abandon these tools necessarily. So there is a package that, and Linux desktop is very arcane in some ways, which is great because you can make it do things you didn't think it could do. And one of those things is to just run inside a JupyterHub. So this is running in, I think, AWS in Oregon. And you can see that it's pretty responsive, right? Like there is not a lot of latency here. Like I'm just typing things, J, that doesn't do anything. But you can see that I'm typing things and it shows up. And this is a full-fledged Linux desktop that you can do Linux desktop things in and install Linux desktop packages like Firefox. So that's Firefox inside Firefox, which I always love. That is a really nice, cute drawing. I haven't seen that before. And you can do copy-paste random stuff in it as well. But the other cool thing here is that you can then work on specific desktop applications that can enable other really cool things. And this is thanks to Development Seed, with whom we work a lot together. And there's a wonderful application called qgis, which is very popular in the GIS world. Maybe potentially like a ArcGIS replacement-ish situation, maybe, right? And it runs in the desktop. It's a desktop application, and you can see that it works really well there. But the wonderful thing with this is like now that that desktop application is running in the web, you can use web technologies like URLs to do things to it, right? So in this case, I hope this demo works. So this is a explorer for earthdata.gov, which is a thing that continues to exist. And you can add on different layers to explore like what this is. Right, this is like a air sea CO2 flux, which I know exactly what that means, and I've added that, and you can explore that here. But like obviously, QGIS will give you more tools to explore that, right? So you can say load into GIS, and that gives you a couple of options, right? Like it's like XYZ tile URL, which is I think a standard in the GIS world, and then you can copy that. Or look at this, it says launch in QGIS. Well, open in QGIS. So if I click that. What this hopefully does is open QGIS for me and open that tile layer for me inside QGIS. So if you look at this URL, there is a /qgis because we wrote a Jupyter server extension that knows about QGIS, and then it knows what to do. So in this case, again, small to read, but you can see it says action is add XYZ tile layer, and then it gives you a URL. So the people who built the web application, right, all they need to do is generate this URL, and then they can put it there, and then it shows up in the hub correctly, and then QGIS knows what to do. And then if I knew more QGIS, I can probably do more things with this, but I don't know any more QGIS. But you can see how, like, by bringing the desktop app into the web in this way, you can do things that otherwise would be really difficult to do, right? Like if you were running a workshop earlier that required you to jump from this, right, like from a web explorer into QGIS, you will have to spend a bunch of time explaining to people XYZ tiles, how to open QGIS, do all of that. Here, you got from there to here in one click. And this is also the kind of things that Jupyter Server Proxy being invisible and JupyterHub being invisible enables, right? Like from an end user perspective, all they see here is QGIS. They don't know anything about Server Proxy. They don't know anything about VNC. They don't know anything about JupyterHub. You as the person teaching them this, or them as the user doing this, can focus on the core of the problems they're trying to solve, rather than like the accidental complexity of everything around that. So I really like this, and so if you have other desktop/web applications that could use, benefit from things like this, this is great. The other benefit here is that a lot of data is on S3 now, and if your QGIS is running on your local machine and you're trying to load like 5 gigs of data, that's going to be really slow. So this lets you co-locate your compute, but in this case, a desktop application next to your data, right? And that itself is also very powerful. We know it's powerful for people who can write code. This allows it to be powerful for extremely talented people who just have chosen to not do their work through typing inscrutable things on a keyboard. All right. Next demos, SSH. This is sort of like the fourth attempt from me to get SSH into JupyterHub, and I think we have finally succeeded. So SSH is amazing. SSH is really old in the best way possible. Like the earth is old and the earth is great, right? So it feels a little bit like that. And it's ubiquitous, right? It works everywhere. It's very well secure, and most of that is because of OpenSSH. OpenSSH is like a beautiful project that's been going on since before I was alive and will continue after I'm dead. And so instead of trying to implement SSH ourselves, again, it's Jupyter Server Proxy starts a process and then proxies things to it. In this case, we have it configured using the Jupyter SSHD proxy project to just start SSHD, which is the server side of SSH, and then be able to proxy things to it. So I'm going to demo things here. So I'm going to use a different hub called Leap that I started a server on. So there is a running server, right? And I'm just going to type ssh leap.2i2c.cloud, right? I've already put my token in the right place. You can see that in the SSHD documentation. But if I go here, this just looks like SSH, right? I've just SSH'd into a machine. But I have SSH'd into a Jupyter hub that's running. So I'm going to show that by saying, touch this is con, which is, maybe I should have typed more. But if I go here, yeah, you can see, and I do ls, you can see this is con, which is the file I just created, right? So this is just, it's running in the same notebook. And you can also see that because it's the same environment, right? Like you can see it's the notebook prompt is here. So for people who want to use just traditional SSH, and learn to struggle how to close Vim, you can continue to do that without having to, do all of the other things that come from that. Can I close this now? Success, I closed Vim. And because this is OpenSSH, you can do all of the things you can do with OpenSSH, like SCP something, right? So I can do touch help me, and then I can maybe SCP stuff. Let's see. These are all expired credentials. It's fine. Okay, help me. This is, yeah, help me because I'm using only one hand. For this demo, and that just copied, all right? And that's true for rsync and everything that's based on SSH. And there is a lot of things based on SSH. So you can see, help me over here. And another thing that's based on SSH is VS Code, right? So this is, VS Code is a proprietary product from Microsoft that has open source versions, and we'll talk about the distinctions. But one of the proprietary extensions they offer is remote SSH. So you can run VS Code on your local machine, however you like, and then you can remote SSH into a machine and then pretend you're over there and get access to the file system, data, run kernels, code, whatever, right? So all of the things you can do with VS Code. And again, I have this configured so I can connect to the same host. And it's setting up. Let's see if this works. Yeah, that worked. So you can see connected to remote. Open my folder. Something. Yeah, home/Jovian. There we go. So it'll come. Okay, one demo failed, which is not bad. Nope, did not fail. Maybe failed. It's, yeah. These things take time. Maybe something. Anyway, this works in general if you're not on conference Wi-Fi, is what I want to say. But, oh, it's in restricted mode for some reason. Okay, regardless, this works, trust me. Trust me, I'm on a motorcycle suit. And the reason that it normally works is because, again, it's just SSH, right? Like OpenSSH, and it works through the normal things that you would do with OpenSSH. So I'm going to try that again. But while this sets up itself in the side, I will also show you that another way for that to work is there is an open source version of that called VS Code Server, and that will just run in your browser. And this, I'm much more confident, will just work, right? Because, yeah, so this is just a version of VS Code that only has the open source components and will just run in your browser, and, like you can do all of the things you would normally do in VS Code. So when you build your JupyterHub image, you can put in extensions and things. And so for people who want to use a full-fledged IDE like VS Code instead of JupyterLab, totally fine, right? So again, no mention of JupyterHub here. You can just give your users what is the best fit for them, and it will all pretty much just work. Yeah, I've already did the VS Code demo. 6 out of 6, well, 5.5 out of 6, let's call it that, right? So I think that's a pretty good number. Yeah, this is connected, so I don't know why it doesn't want me to. Okay, let's try that again. Maybe, yeah, maybe. It's like, put the mic down. Let me try to change this file. I'm just going to say this is from my local DAS. And save it. Nope. All right. Never mind. 5.5 out of 6. I will take that. See, the only proprietary product I tried to demo failed. Anyway, it's not my fault. So there are some limitations, right? Like it is because security is handled at the network layer. Like if you are on a HPC type system, your project needs to support Unix sockets for like security. But if you're in a container system, it doesn't matter. It does require Jupyter Server Proxy in the environment. So even if you're using RStudio, it means you need a Python install, which can be like a little bit iffy sometimes. And the web app needs to support running under different base URLs. Like this, I would say most well-behaved classic web applications do support this, right? Like so, you can run under /Yuvi Panda as much. You can run under / random other person's name, right? And sometimes web apps don't do that, and then that's a problem. But often they will accept a fix for that. We also have a blog post that about rethinking JupyterHub single user that I think leads into this. We technically you can do all of these things, right? But I think socially we want non-JupyterLab, non-Jupyter Notebook use cases to feel just as first class as everyone else. And so this is a technical proposal that will potentially help move that social thing forward, right? But so is giving this talk, because I want, like people who primarily don't use JupyterLab or Jupyter Notebooks to see that they can actually still use JupyterHub and provide a lot of value to end users. That's it. So you can chat with us on Zulip. Zulip is super great and very active. Highly recommend coming and hanging out and saying hi. And thank you.